So the Packers did win again. They did win again. So everyone, this is apple juice. I really like apple juice. My whole family does. My kids drink it by the pint. No, not pint. This is a pint. They drink it by the quart probably. So Max, here's to another Packers victory. Cheers.
The guy loves the apple juice.
'Tis the season.
And for those of you keeping track at home, Brandon McManus is number 17.
Two weeks in a row chugging an apple juice. I remember back in the day where it was 2 days in a row I'd chug an apple juice.
I can't chug apple juice. I'm like, No, it's not my strong suit. Not my strong suit.
Yeah. It's a skill developed over time, over lots of practice.
So let's start out the episode with, let's just recap our predictions from last week. I'd like to start there this go around. And I think the rest of the conversations will kind of come up naturally as we go through it. So again, it always seems like so long ago, but last Thursday, the Broncos face off against the Saints. I didn't catch much of that game. It doesn't sound like you really caught a whole lot of that game too. I turned it down with 7 minutes to go in the third quarter. It was a kind of a blowout at that point. Did not watch it any further. I'm going to preface this way. We both went 11-4 in our predictions last week. We just had different games across the board. So when I say you took the Saints and I took the Broncos, don't take offense to that because I got some picks. We had the same record last week, correct?
Yeah.
Broncos are really just an up and down team. They're I wouldn't say they're quite my Arizona Cardinals where I like to pick them. They're not your Houston Texans where you like to pick them, but they're a team that intrigued me enough where Bo Nix out there is showing some promise. He's had some good games. The team has come together. I don't know if it was necessarily the joint practice that we had out in Denver in the preseason where like they just completely mopped up the Packers that entire session. But I like where this Broncos team is going. As far as the Saints are concerned, they've lost 5 straight games. That was a home game that they lost to the Broncos.
Yeah, Saints have kind of fallen apart. They started out the season hot. They started out 2-0. I believe they were in both of our top 10 power rankings in the first couple of weeks, and things just started falling apart from there. Derrick Carr's injured. There's talks of Alvin Kamara getting traded.
He signed a 2 extension today.
Oh,
so with the Saints,
so that's not happening.
So he's not going anywhere. But yeah, there were some talks that maybe Adams might go to the Saints where Derek Carr, but I think once he got hurt, that all went out the window. Rattler finished 25 of 35 with 172 yards.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's definitely a sinking ship, and I'm not really sure when they're going to be able to right it because the 2 other teams that have continued to at least show some sort of consistency, not going to say a whole lot of it, but the Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are kind of running away with that division as a 1-2 race. And the Saints need to pick it up real quick.
Yeah, tough division for the Saints to come back in. Talking about Spencer Rattler, an interesting situation too. I mean, he came out of college. He's a very talented quarterback and actually had eyes on him while he was in college and had some expectations that he might eventually become star in the NFL. He's only played 2 games now, but he has not played well. And then did you see him compare himself to Patrick Mahomes after their most recent loss? Like, come on, man. Let's be a little more humble. You haven't played well. I understand that it's his first couple of games and that's how he started the interviews. Like, I've only played 2 games in the NFL, blah, blah, blah. But then to follow that up with, I'm just as good as Patrick Mahomes. Like, I don't know. It's an interesting situation. Who knows if
he looks like Patrick Mahomes, doesn't he?
He does a little bit, yeah.
That's all he's got going for him.
Yeah, pretty much. Patrick Mahomes has not played well this year either. I actually saw a side by side talking about Trevor Lawrence, Jags quarterback, who we talked about extensively in the last episode. Trevor Lawrence's numbers, touchdowns, interceptions, passer rating, all that, better than Patrick Mahomes this year.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And they're 6-0.
Well, and that's the crazy part, right? The fact that they continue to find ways to win games, and they're not. You want to talk about a team that's not clicking yet? Like,
right.
I hate them so much.
Well, and they've had so much I don't hate the Chiefs either. A lot of people have turned the Chiefs into the new New England Patriots, the Tom Brady New England Patriots. I hated Tom Brady and the Patriots. I really don't hate the Chiefs. I like the players they have. Andy Reid is an incredible coach, and to see him continue to win games with Patrick Mahomes playing poorly, their starting running back Isaiah Pacheco has been out for a majority of the season, and now Rashee Rice, their number one wide receiver, he's out for the season. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. So just Andy Reid being able to still figure out ways to win games against good teams. They haven't just been beating up on, the bottom of the barrel. Stay 6-0 with all that adversity is pretty incredible.
It is. It's not an easy thing to do. Do we want to talk about the Patriots and Jacksonville Jaguars game at all? Maybe more from the Patriots side of things. Drake May gets his second career start, throws 276 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, but only a quarterback rating of 40.6. Not the greatest.
Yeah, I took the Pats in that game, didn't I?
You did take the Pats in that game. I think a lot of it has to do with the defense. Right? Their defense has shown signs that they can be a tough defense to get through. And really, Jacksonville, we didn't talk about this in the regular episode, but Jacksonville trailed 0-7 after one quarter, scores all their points in the second quarter, 20, and then kind of just wrote out the rest of the game. And there were, turnovers were forced and mistakes were happening and all that stuff that happened in the second half. But yeah, the Patriots have fallen hard. I feel for their head coach. I don't think he's probably going to get much of an opportunity after this season. I don't think he's a Robert Saleh. Now I have to say Saleh every episode because I can prove I can pronounce it right. I don't think it's going to be something where they get rid of him, but yeah, the Patriots have fallen far from where they used to be. 1-6 is where they currently rank.
Yeah, I think my reasoning for picking them last week was the Jags have not played well consistently. And then to your point about the Patriots defense, the defense is still pretty good. And then the previous week, Drake May had come in and looked pretty good. So I was just kind of going off of what had been happening recently. But obviously they got dominated by the Jags.
The next game on the docket is the Seahawks versus the Falcons. This one surprised me a little bit. Not necessarily that the Seahawks won, but that I didn't pick the Seahawks to win. I don't know what this is one of those where you don't really keep track of who. We do this kind of shoot from the hips. Yeah, you sent me your team predictions a little bit ahead of this episode. I haven't made any of mine yet. I haven't even looked at yours, quite frankly. But I had the Seahawks making the playoffs. I think I had the Seahawks beating the 49ers or something 2 weeks. I don't know why I didn't pick them, but they whooped tail. I'm really working on my curse words. I'm trying not to curse so this doesn't get shot.
We're going to have to find a
bleep. Or to say, just weird phrases like they whooped their tails. 34 wasn't really even a game for the most part. They controlled the entire operation. Yeah, Seattle. Does Seattle make the playoffs? Maybe I'll ask you that question. Are they good enough to make the playoffs?
Oh, man. I think it's going to be tough with the rest of the competition in the NFC in general. I mean, you look at the NFC North right now, all 4 teams in the North are looking good. And then also you got to look at teams like the 49ers, for example. We'll get to what's going on with the 49ers, but teams like the 49ers or the Eagles. The Eagles may be a better example. So they kind of had a rough couple of weeks, but this last week they came back and looked like the dominant team that we expected them to be again. So that there's just so much competition in the NFC. It may be very tough for the Seahawks to make the playoffs, but I don't know. They've got a good team. I think part of the issue was injuries. They've got a lot of weapons around Geno Smith. The defense has been pretty good, so I wouldn't say it's out of the question that they make the playoffs still.
Flipping it over to the Falcons, I'm just looking at what they've done this season. They lost to the Steelers, who have turned out to be a really competitive team. They've lost to the Chiefs, and then they lost to the Seahawks. The games they won, though, they squeaked out that one in week 2 against the Eagles. They only won by 2 against the Saints, the struggling Saints, mind you, and they won by 6 against the Buccaneers. This is a tough team to predict. They actually face off against the Buccaneers I'm looking at right now in this upcoming. But I guess where I'm getting out there, this could easily be a 2-5 team versus a 4-3 team with some of the ones that they've been able to speak out and snatch victories. Very tough team to predict there. On the Seahawks side of the ball, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think there's really a path to the playoffs with just how competitive the rest of the NFC is. Their losses came to the Niners, the Giants, and the Lions. Yeah, I don't know. These are two teams in particular where maybe we said it last week, but it's a little bit of a coin flip as far as what team's going to show up on Sunday. Next game, Titans and Bills. Not much of a contest there. Not really any surprises there either. The Bills continue to add to the win column. They're 5-2 on the season. Finished 34-10, or at least they beat the Titans 34-10. I looked at your power rankings. You got the Bills quite a bit higher than where I got the Bills. Amari Cooper joins the roster, finishes the game with a touchdown and whatnot, but I don't know. I'm not in love with the Bills. I think they're going to fall on their face at some point this season, I guess is where I'm getting.
And they may. I honestly, personally, I think the Amari Cooper trade makes this a very dangerous team. Amari Cooper is still one of the best receivers in the league. You add that to Josh Allen, who is arguably one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the league. James Cook has emerged as a pretty stellar running back. Their defense is pretty solid. I think this trade that they made for Cooper changes things a lot.
You're probably right. In fantasy football, if you had a choice to take Adams or Amari Cooper as a wide receiver, who would you take?
Like right now, after they've both made moves to different teams? You're saying?
Yep.
I'd take Cooper.
Why is that? Just more dynamic offense or
a better quarterback? Josh Allen is far and above a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers at this point. We talked about it last week. Aaron Rodgers hasn't thrown for over 300 yards in 3 years, 3 seasons. So it's night and day difference between. Well, okay, sure. Well, I'll give him that, I guess. Okay, he was injured. He didn't have a chance at a 300-yard game. Yeah, right. But I mean, with that aside, Josh Allen is a way better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers at this point. So I would definitely take Cooper over Adams.
Cincinnati finds themselves with back-to-back wins. Absolutely awful, and nobody should lose to the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson goes out with an injury. Backup, Jameis Winston comes in about halfway through the game, 3/4 of the way through the game. It seems like a game that the Bengals should have won by more. We both took the Bengals winning this one, but a win's a win. Nonetheless, they moved to 3-4 after they were 0-3 to start the season. Yeah, 0-3 to start the season.
Something like that, yeah.
Their losses come to, so for the most part, pretty good competition that they were losing to. But I don't know. The Bengals still have a long ways to go if they're going to be. They have the Eagles coming up next week, and it can be right back in the hell column.
The Bengals are really tough to figure out this season. I mean, we came into the season expecting them to be a pretty solid team and likely a playoff team. And then to start out the way that they did, and the close losses that they've had, it was unexpected that they were going to perform this way this year. So it's Well, and then they have weeks where they look great. Even the loss they had against the Ravens, that game went to overtime. They were right in that game, and the Ravens are one of the top.
Should have won that game.
Right, yeah, they should have won that game, and the Ravens are one of the top 3 teams in the league right now. So this Bengals team is just very hard to figure out, and hard to figure out where they're going to end up at the end of the year. If they continue to be so up and down, they likely don't make the playoffs. But if they can get it together, then, maybe at the end of the season, we see them kind of overtake some of these other AFC teams that they've been behind to start the season.
Yeah, that AFC is a little bit more wide open than the NFC, where they can definitely claw their way back in and make a playoff run. I want to bring up real quick. I thought about bringing it up in our actual full episode or the final thoughts video, but I had to take another look at these top 10 highest paid quarterbacks and just kind of the start of the season that these quarterbacks have had. So Dak Prescott, number 1, highest paid at $60 million. Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence are tied with Jordan Love at $55 million. Tua, number 5 with 53. He got concussed. Jared Goff is tied at 5th for the Detroit Lions. He's probably looked the best on this entire list. And yes, I will admit it. I threw him under the bus a few weeks ago, but boy, oh boy, he's looked good. Justin Herbert at number 7, Lamar Jackson at 8, Jalen Hurts at 9, and Kyler Murray at 10. I mean, of these top 10 highest paid quarterbacks, you could probably name 3 that are deserving of what they're getting paid.
Right.
The rest of them have had really rough starts to this season.
Are you including Jordan Love in those 3?
I might. I don't know if I would. No, I was going the other way with it. I'd say Jordan Love has had a rough start to the season for sure.
I agree.
You're probably looking at Jared Goff, Lamar Jackson. So 2. Quite frankly, 2 of the top 10 highest paid quarterbacks have had good seasons so far. Everyone else has really not performed to their paycheck.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting. Patrick Mahomes is at number 12 as the highest paid quarterback. Josh Allen is number 14. It's only the top 15, but yeah, it's been an interesting start for some of these quarterbacks that we thought would have better seasons.
And the guys the quarterbacks that have performed the best are a lot of the young guys, or the guys like Baker Mayfield that was on. He's on his 3rd team now or something like that, 3rd or 4th team. And yeah, overall, it's been a very interesting season, which I enjoy. I don't necessarily like it where it's 2 or 3 clear-cut top teams. All right, these teams are dominant throughout the entire season. They're going to the Super Bowl, and it's just a matter of which one comes out with the win at the end. Like, I'd prefer it this way with all the question marks, right?
These NFL script writers, they really are. They're getting it down. They're
figuring out how to make it real interesting, huh?
We're gonna have the Kansas City Chiefs just absolutely suck, but they keep winning, right? Over here,
they still win somehow.
And then they all thought the Niners would be this dominant NFC team, and we're just gonna make them suck. All right, they're gonna throw a whole bunch of wrenches here in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
But before we get to the Niners, though, this one should cause a little bit of a topic. So, Miami Dolphins lose to the Indianapolis Colts. They dropped their 3rd straight loss. They're 2-4 on the season. Colts moved to 4-3, win 16-10. There's only one thing that I want to talk about with these 2 teams in particular, and it's the Tua conversation. So he is a possibility to play on Sunday.
I saw that it's likely that he plays on Sunday.
Why is that even a thing?
I don't know, man. I'm pretty sure I didn't dig too deep into it, but I'm pretty sure I saw a comment from Tua. A reporter must have asked him about, if he's okay, if he's worried about the whole concussion thing, and he said, "I appreciate you being concerned, but I'm good. I'm ready to go. Whatever." Yeah, it's interesting. I guess I don't necessarily agree with that decision for it. Like, if it was me, if I was in Tua's position, I'd probably hang it up. Honestly, I'd probably be done. He's had too many scary situations that at that point I'd be like, you know what? I got a family, I got kids, I got a wife. I'm gonna find a different job. But
Yeah, I don't mean to make light out of the situation, but with, what, 9 weeks to go, 10 weeks to go in the season, 10 weeks to go in the season. I mean, the likelihood that with how easy that last concussion was for him to sustain,
right,
and the effects that came from that, the likelihood of him getting another concussion this season is going to be pretty high. I don't want to put an exact percentage on it, but I just feel I don't need mark my words, any sort of thing like that. But I feel like that next concussion could be disastrous for this guy. And
yeah,
I'm just so shocked. I think you brought up, I mean, you did bring it up last week on the overtime episode that never heard, that you asked me while we were making our score projections, is Tua playing this week? I'm like, you gotta be kidding me if he's even coming back this year. And sure enough, he's making headlines that he's likely to play on Sunday. Just bizarre. Not my monkey, not my circus sort of a thing. And he's going to do what he wants to do. And apparently I guess what's most surprising is that the Dolphins just don't say, no,
yeah,
don't.
yeah. I mean, if he does have another head injury and it turns into a very bad situation, it's part of it's going to be on that organization, not saying no.
Do you remember why Andrew Luck retired?
I think it wasn't a concussion issue. He did have a lot of injuries, but it wasn't head injury related, I don't think. He had multiple injuries where he was out for extended periods of time, but I think they were I think most of them were lower body injuries, and he just decided that it was too much for him. He didn't want to put his body through that. That was pretty crazy. That was one of the craziest things to happen in our lifetime as far as football fans go. Like, it was kind of out of nowhere. No one expected it. And I mean, honestly, after he did it, I really expected him to maybe sit out a season and then come back. And then there was the whole deal where the Colts still had him under contract. So if he still decided to come back, he would still be on the Colts. They wouldn't have to worry about him going to a different team. But that's kind of what I expected. I expected him to take a year off and then decide to come back. But I mean, I don't even know what he's doing now. It's been years since he retired. But
I think he did a little bit of analyst stuff. Like, he might show up on the morning preview kickoff or whatever the case is. But yeah, I haven't seen him for a number of years. But he was young. He was kind of at the top of his game as far as quarterbacks go, and decided to hang. The Packers in particular, with this being a Packers podcast, they've let players go and they wouldn't bring them back to the roster because they were concerned about, long-term health concerns. It's just interesting that, I don't know, maybe I got a big heart, but you'd almost think after 5 concussions that Tua's had, the Dolphins would be like, look, here's 50 million, 75 million of your contract. You stop. You can't play any more football.
right.
I'm not throwing the Dolphins under the bus as an organization because it's Tua's decision ultimately, but it's really bizarre that here we are after what we saw a few weeks ago, that he's coming back, and time will tell how this shapes out. Are you going to start taking the Dolphins again? And
No, and what I was going to say was the piece that we don't know is we don't know what his doctors are saying. We don't know what the medical diagnoses have been. So we don't know that part of the story. We can just go off of what we see on the broadcast.
That's true.
But like you said, that this last concussion, it was not a very violent hit. And for his body to react the way it did, it just seems like it doesn't make sense for him to come back. But again, we don't know the whole story, so we'll see what happens.
We can move over to the Detroit Lions and Minnesota Vikings game. Were you flipping back and forth at all during this matchup on
I
Sunday, or
really
were you
didn't.
locked?
I really didn't. I was locked into the Packers game. I mean, I kind of kept up like on my phone, like I'd see score updates and stuff like that. I mean, we've talked about it. I got multiple fantasy leagues. I'm into DraftKings and Prize Picks and all that stuff. So I'm constantly getting updates on my phones when Jahmyr Gibbs has a touchdown or Jared Goff has a big throw or something like that. So I kind of kept up with it that way. But no, I did not watch really any of it. I stayed locked into that Packers Texans game.
I was keeping up with the ticker on the bottom. I mean, at one
Yeah.
point, I'm looking at the box score now. Vikings go out to a 10-0 lead, and then the Lions scored 21 unanswered points. It's 21-10 at halftime. Vikings had an opportunity and a lead late in that game, and it came down to a game-winning field goal. Did you catch at least the end of the game where Detroit was setting up for the field goal? I
Yep.
haven't heard a whole lot of people talk about this, but there's like a minute, 20 left, and the line of what? Cookies?
Yeah, my
Cookies
wife
with their
brought me.
apple juice?
I'm 5 years old, everybody. My wife
We're,
just brought me
we're,
football cookies.
look, we're not going to eat on the podcast, so put the damn cookies away. All right? I don't need to hear you chewing, okay? But anyway, a minute 15, minute 20 left in the game, and Detroit is kneeling the football on first
Yeah.
down, second down. What? I don't know. I've never seen anything like that before, where they're just giving up 2 yards to kick a game-winning field goal. I don't know why they didn't attempt to run. I mean, I know like you risk a fumble, but pretty bizarre ending of the game. Regardless, Detroit wins 31-29. Both these teams moved to 5-1 on the season. The hell of a game, hell of a division.
Yeah.
I'm glad
And
Detroit won.
I'm glad they did too. The game didn't turn out the way that we both kind of hoped it would. I kind of was hoping that the Lions would destroy the Vikings and bring Minnesota back down to earth a little bit. But Vikings hung in there. Like you said, they started out leading that game and they were right in it. Yeah, this division's insane. I've been seeing all this stuff all over social media today, all over sports media. If the playoffs happened today, all 4 teams in the NFC North would be in the playoffs, which has never happened before. It's crazy to think that that's even a possibility. Obviously, as we get further into the season, that's very unlikely to happen, but pretty crazy. Best division in football probably right now.
Oh, it's hands down the best division in football. Combined record is 19-6 between all 4 teams. As far as all 4 of them making the playoffs, I mean, yeah, if it ends today, sure. I hate to break it to fans, and I'm going to give you guys some good news and some happy thoughts later on in this episode. But as far as Bears fans are concerned, that schedule gets real tough later on in the season with division matchups, with some of these matchups that the Packers have had to have, the Vikings have had to have, the Lions have had to have. It's the Bears are not going to finish very strong. But there's a lot of opportunity for that team to continue to grow year over year. Back to this particular game, though, Aaron Jones was a surprise on this one. He did play. He finished the game with 93 yards, had 1 touchdown, averaged 6.6 yards to carry. So, as you mentioned last week in overtime, which nobody watched for the 5th time I've said that, he is the difference maker for sure. And this team definitely hums a lot better when he's in their backfield. But Jared Goff finished 22 for 25. At one point, I watched that ticker. He was like, I don't know if it was 13 for 13 again to start the game. He's playing out of his mind when it comes to.
Yeah.
I haven't watched them enough to figure out whether or not these are they safe little check downs, or is he actually making throws? But regardless, to finish with that type of completion percentage, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interception. Boy, that's a very strong show. He's probably the leading favorite right now when it comes to the MVP race.
Yeah, and I think as far as the Lions offense, I think it is a lot of high percentage throws. I think it is a lot of checkdowns. I think that's why he has a high completion percentage, but obviously it's working. And we literally talked about it with the Packers last week against the Cardinals. That's what Jordan Love needed to get back to. That's what he did. He had a high completion percentage, and the Packers dominated that game. So, the fact that Jared Goff is throwing, not throwing very far downfield, obviously that doesn't make a difference in their success.
And so 2 stats that jump out to me. First, Jahmyr Gibbs, Lions running back, 15 carries, 116 yards, averaging 7.7 yards a carry. He had 2 touchdowns. But Amon-Ra St. Brown had 8 receptions for 112 yards, averaging 14 yards a reception. So that stat right there tells me that they're not necessarily check down. He is finding
so it
St.
could
Brown
be yards
opening,
after,
or
it could be yards after catch too.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. His longest was 35 yards too, so it could just be a little bit of a skew percent there too.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I didn't watch the game, so I don't know 100% for sure. But Amon-Ra St. Brown is a very good yards after catch receiver, so part of his total yardage definitely could be because of his yards after catch.
Eagles beat up on the Giants 28-3. They moved to 4-2 on the season. The Giants continue to do Giant things, or opposite of Giants things, maybe is what I want to say. Hurts okay. He finished 10 for 14. Not a lot of pass attempts, 114 yards. But Saquon, Mr. Barkley, 17 carries, 176 yards and 1 touchdown. That's what, 10 yards a carry? Absolutely insane performance. That seems to be what Aaron Jones has done to the Vikings. Saquon has clearly done to the Philadelphia Eagles. And as you mentioned, revenge game. He did not leave anything on the table and absolutely destroyed that New York Giants defense.
Yeah. And I was kind of expecting that. I was a little surprised that the Giants didn't play even a little bit better. They got this star wide receiver, Malik Neighbors, that I was kind of expecting to have a big game, because the Eagles' pass defense still isn't all that great, but they even held Neighbors in check. So all around, the Eagles pretty much dominated that game. And as far as their offense goes, yes, but Barkley handled that game basically himself, put the team on his back.
Speaking of high-paid quarterbacks, Daniel Jones is the 15th highest-paid quarterback with $40 million a season, a year, if you will. I mean, the Giants don't have Deshaun Watson problems, perhaps, but it doesn't necessarily mean they have a quarterback that's going to get them into the playoffs either. That's a problem.
No, it's a little surprising that the Giants haven't gone to the draft for another quarterback in these last couple of years with Danny Dimes, because I don't know. They pay him and they still start him as if they think he's the guy, like he's their franchise quarterback for the foreseeable future, but he hasn't shown that at all. I mean, he'll have flashes.
Not even a little.
He'll have flashes where he'll have a decent game. His rushing ability, which out of college, he wasn't known as a rushing quarterback. And then they drafted him and he came into the NFL and was running a lot more than he ever had before. So I don't know. It's a weird situation that the Giants, they're like latching on to Daniel Jones, thinking, oh, he's just a season away. Next year's his year. It's not going to happen. He's not.
I don't know. I don't know how long his contract is, but they should definitely be looking towards the draft for a quarterback, or maybe somewhere in free agency. Raiders lose to the Rams 15-20. I don't have a whole lot of thoughts on this particular games. The Rams could potentially get better in this upcoming week. We'll probably maybe talk about that a little bit more when we get to week 8. Score predictions. Commanders absolutely destroy the Panthers. Panthers, worst team in the league, probably right behind, or I guess in front of, whatever way you want to look at it. Cleveland Browns, 2 of the worst teams in the league, but Panthers just continue to look miserable. And Anthony Richardson, right?
Yep. For the Colts?
Goes down and gets hurt. No. What's Jaden Daniels? That's what I'm looking for. Jaden Daniels gets hurt in that game.
He did. Okay. I didn't know that. And then today, so we record this on Tuesday. So as far as a fantasy football perspective, so you can't pick up players off of the waiver wire or free agency until the Monday night games are over. And typically most platforms don't let you start picking guys up until Tuesday. So then I started looking at the waiver wire, and I don't even know who the Commanders' backup is right now. But
Marcus
I saw him.
Mariota.
Yes, Marcus Mariota. I saw him at the top of the list as far as pickups for the week, who you should pick up week. And so I saw that and I was like, why? I didn't know that Jaden Daniels got injured. So yeah, that's a big deal. That's a huge deal for this Commanders team.
So he's considered week to week from the looks of things. It's a rib injury. So it's all really just going to boil down to feel. I mean, it's not like a separated or broken collarbone or anything like that. But yeah, they're facing up against the Bears this upcoming week, and I would definitely like it if Jaden Daniels was the starter. Not just for the fact that gives Washington a much bigger advantage to win that game.
Yeah.
But just these two highly touted young rookie quarterbacks being able to go head to head, and this matchup would be very entertaining. But even with him going out with an injury, they still just absolutely destroy the Panthers. Mariota finishes with 205 yards, 2 touchdowns, and the Panthers still suck.
Yeah. Yeah, Panthers still suck. Andy Dalton gave them a little bit of hope a couple weeks ago, but I am very interested to see. So the Panthers drafted a running back out of Texas, Jonathan Brooks. He had an ACL injury his last season in college, so he's been on IR so far this season. I stashed him in a couple of my fantasy leagues, and I've just been holding on to him. He practiced this week, didn't play obviously, but he practiced. So it's possible he plays this week. So I don't think that changes what this Panthers team season ends up being, but I am interested to see how he does, because he's touted as a generational talent at running back, the next big star running back in the league. So interested to see how that happens. The Jaden Daniels situation, now that I'm thinking about it, I do remember seeing notifications on my phone that he had an injury. And then I do remember seeing something, I think maybe yesterday, that came out that he said that he does, or either he said or the organization said that they don't expect it to be an injury that would necessarily hold him out of the game this coming week. Yeah, I agree. I think for this matchup with the Bears, it's not so much Jaden Daniels gives Washington that advantage against an NFC North team. It's more so for me, there's been this comparison, how well Jaden Daniels has done and Caleb Williams' early season struggles, the number 1 overall versus, I can't remember when Daniels got drafted, but just the early season, what's the word I'm looking for? Narrative. Early season narrative with, Bears people saying, oh, Bears fans are upset. They should have drafted Jaden Daniels instead of Caleb Williams, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, Caleb Williams has stepped up and started to play better. So at this point, that matchup would probably be pretty stellar.
Yeah, I saw, I can't find it on my iPad right now, but I wanted to look up the PFF rankings from last week, and I stumbled across the top rookies so far this season. And Williams from the Packers.
Number 1.
Williams. What, you saw Jaden Daniels as number 1?
No. Evan Williams, number 1 rookie on PFF.
Why? I saw him at number 9 on my rankings.
I just, right before recording, I saw that he's ranked number 1 on PFF's rookie rankings. I saw he's number 1 rookie rankings and number 5 in safeties overall in the entire league.
Oh yeah, so ranking the best NFL rookies after week 7. So there you go. Evan Williams, Green Bay Packers, number 1. I like that much better than what I was originally going to say. That's effing awesome. The fact that he's wearing that number 33 too, like Micah Hyde, just impressive. Jaden Daniels in this ranking drops to number 3. I saw him at number 1 in the previous one, so he's ranked number 3. And then Malik Neighbors at number 6. He's a name that we just discussed recently. I am scrolling, and I do not even see Caleb Williams in the top 50.
Wow. Even after his recent performances, huh? Wow.
Yeah,
That
Marvin
says
Harrison
something.
Jr. at 12. Yeah, that does say something interesting.
mean,
I wonder what I stumbled across earlier that was
These
unfactual.
these PFF rankings, so Pro Football Focus isn't like, so a lot of people will use Pro Football Focus for, like, I use it for fantasy football purposes, like figuring out players I want to go for in fantasy football. But ultimately, they're grading these players based on their performance on the field, like not how many fantasy points they put up or whatnot. So, and PFF has really become the top site or the top grader for these players, it's top resource for all these stats and all this grading. So for them to have Evan Williams at number 1 in these rookie and number 5 overall, I'd be interested to see where Xavier McKinney is at. Because if Evan Williams is number 5, is Xavier McKinney ahead of him? I would expect that, but he may not be.
Yeah, he probably is behind him, quite frankly.
Yeah, I would think so.
Even with all those interceptions, we got to dive through the rest of these games before we make our predictions.
We're
running long in the tooth here, and these are the best games, in my opinion, of the weekend.
Let's
talk about. So Chiefs and Niners. I took the Niners. You took the Chiefs. I was really hoping, thinking, praying that the Chiefs would get their first loss for the season too. But as we discussed, the Chiefs have continued to look very well. Brock Purdy finishes with 212 yards and 3 interceptions, 0 touchdowns. I've never been a big believer in Brock Purdy. I'm not saying, he just had a bad game, but this team the Niners do not operate well without Christian McCaffrey. Losing Brandon Ayuk is a huge hit for that team as well. Sitting at 3-4 on the season. Not saying they won't turn it around, but this is definitely an uphill battle for them for the rest of the year.
Honestly, I don't know that they turn it around. I don't know that they have a shot at turning it around with Ayuk done for the season. Deebo Samuel, also, they lost him early in that game. He was sick. He was seeing a doctor. And then did you hear that he was hospitalized? He was hospitalized after he talked to the doctor on the sideline. They brought him to the hospital and he had pneumonia. He had fluid in his lungs. He just got discharged from the hospital today, I believe. Obviously, Deebo will be back. Pneumonia is not, it's a sickness. It's not an injury that he's going to be out for multiple weeks.
Right.
But when Brock Purdy loses those weapons, he's obviously not as good as he can be with all of that. And McCaffrey, who knows? Who knows if he's even going to come back this season? It doesn't look like he's going to be coming back this week. He's dealing with tendonitis in both of his Achilles tendons. So I don't know. They've lost so many of these weapons to injury this year, and McCaffrey coming back is really a big question mark. So I don't know that they turn it around.
I got a couple different thoughts here. So the first thing that I would say is this is exactly why I get so upset when we lose in the playoffs, because those that don't watch football or follow as closely as maybe you and I do, they'll go, well, it's a good team. They'll bounce back. They'll get better. They'll get stronger as always next year. This is the kind of crap that can happen next year where you're like, man, we were right there. We were in the Super Bowl. We were one of the best teams. And just so many things can pop up. It's hard to stay healthy throughout the course of the season. It's hard to come away and win close games and be competitive. This is, you might not be wrong. This could be definitely a team that takes a huge step, misses the playoffs, but just kind of a shocking unfolding that's happening with the 49ers. We already talked about the Chiefs, so I don't want to talk about that really any more than we already did. But yeah, that's that whole division's wide open at this point. We talked about Seattle in that division. We talked about the Arizona Cardinals kind of have an up and down season. They actually have the same record as the 49ers. And then you're looking at the Rams. I mean, they get Puka Nacua back and Cooper Kupp back, and maybe they run away with that division. It's pretty much wide open over there in the NFC West.
Yeah.
Jets and Steelers. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
On Sunday,
I have to say, when I was taking notes today, so I usually separate my notes in, for the first episode, talking about the Packers recap and the look ahead to the following week. I'll have notes for that. And then I have overtime notes. My very first note for overtime is Jets still lose.
What's my very first note? Oh, it was just that we both went 11-4 in our predictions. That was my very first note. But yes, I was up at Mike Avon all weekend, and then so I didn't even catch the first half of the Sunday night football game. It was beautiful. I had a bonfire. I came in, turned on the game, it was 30-15, a little bit of time left in the third quarter, and I was like, they are getting absolutely destroyed. Now, you did take the Jets, but I think in your gut, your heart of hearts, you were like, I was with you. I didn't know which way to go either. It kind of seemed like a perfect storm for them to come back and get victory. But Rodgers threw 39 pass attempts. He had 2 interceptions, 1 touchdown, finished with a quarterback rating of 50.6. Their new weapon, Devontae Adams, 3 receptions off of 9 targets, only 30 yards. 9 targets. That's shared. I mean, Breece Hall also had 9 targets. Garrett Wilson had 9 targets. I mean, there were plenty of targets to go around with 39 pass attempts. But Rodgers came out today, Tuesday that is, and this isn't like a relaxed moment by any means of the stretch of the imagination, but he pointed out that the team is playing too angry and they just need to start having fun. And I'm just thinking to myself, well, who's the person bringing all the angry? Rodgers.
Right.
I mean, she's pointing the finger and there's 3 fingers pointing right back, right? The guy has been pissed off since week 2. Like, who are you telling this to? Yourself?
Yeah. It's so bad. It's so bad.
And to that point, I think we both perked up a little bit when the Jets game came up. I almost wanted to start the whole overtime talking about the Jets, but
like I said, that was my first note. That was where I wanted to start.
Why did we want to see this team fail? Is there some sort of subconscious thing that you didn't work in Green Bay, so it's not going to work in New York? Or
I think it's just the way it ended the last couple of years with Rodgers in Green Bay. I was just so over the drama and the regression. It was very obvious, even his last couple of seasons in Green Bay, that he was regressing, and he was short on throws. He wasn't as accurate. I mean, we talked about it earlier. He hasn't thrown for over 300 yards in years, and a couple of those years were still with Green Bay. So I think it was just the frustration with the drama and the poor play, the bad seasons at the end there with Rodgers, that I was so done with it, so over it. And to have create all this drama in Green Bay for our Green Bay Packers team, I was annoyed with it, ready for it to be done. So I'm happy that they're dealing with it in New York as opposed to in Green Bay. I don't know. I guess I don't necessarily wish them ill. Like, I don't, if they were being successful right now, great, good for them. But I don't know. It is a little bit satisfying seeing all the issues that we had with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. Now it's very obvious. It's followed him. All the issues that were going on in Green Bay, they're going on in New York now. It's kind of an I told you so moment.
Well, it's absolutely wild. Rodgers' last season in Green Bay, the Packers finished 8-9. They lose at home, the final game of the year to make the playoff. They lose that game to the Detroit Lions. Rodgers goes on his darkness tour that offseason, doesn't have a lot of communication with the Packers, decide I don't know if he decided or if the Packers ultimately decided it's time to move on. But Rodgers felt like he didn't want to go through it. He was very vocal. I don't want to go through a rebuilding. I do not want to do a rebuild. I want to win championships. So he goes to the Jets and they bring in all the talent and it's supposed to be great. He gets hurt and then none of that talent really pans out. So now here we are in the 11th hour of the Aaron Rodgers Jets experiment where they bring in Devontae Adams and it's only 1 week, but to have that kind of performance and fall flat on their face, yeah, it is extremely satisfying because to a sense, it kind of feels like he gave up on us to an extent, but it's equally as gratifying to know that it's just worked out so well for us as Packers fans to see Jordan Love ascend and to see all these weapons around him and these young emerging players. This is a completely different team, the Packers, than what we had 5 years ago. And it's a fresh start and it's trending in the right direction. And as I said in our main episode, the ability for them to win games that they couldn't win last year already 1 year later is just awesome to see. And as far as they're going, yeah, I will be rooting against them every week. Hands down, I'll root against them every week.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on from the Jets. We got to keep this train moving. The big Monday night football matchup, Ravens and Tampa Bay. That was one hell of a rocking stadium to start that game last night.
Yeah.
And I think outside of, if Mike Williams doesn't get hurt, is it Evan Williams? Evan Williams doesn't get hurt.
Mike Williams.
No, who am I thinking of? Mike Williams. Okay. If he doesn't get hurt, maybe that game works out a little bit differently. That's definitely a huge weapon. He finished the game with a touchdown. I'm fairly certain, but
Yep.
we touched upon a little bit earlier when we were talking about the quarterbacks and getting higher paid, and you brought up Baker Mayfield. He's just such a guy that I love to root for whatever reason, like being that underdog and getting his second chance and the entire city is rallying around him. He got a contract this offseason and it wasn't the highest paid quarterback contract. It was like, hey, here's a good salary. Come be our quarterback. Let's see what we can do. I like what the Buccaneers, that's a fun team to cheer for. But on the flip side, speaking about the Ravens, they get their 5th straight victory. They do end up being that dominant force that we kind of predicted them to be. You did take, I think, Tampa Bay in that game. I don't hold that against you because I think Tampa Bay being at home against the Ravens team that's been a little bit up and down so far this season, that's a safe bet. But outside of a hot start, Tampa Bay starts the game 10-0 at the end of the first quarter, and then it was nothing but Ravens for the rest of the game. They almost blew it at the end, but Baltimore continues to look like one of the dominant teams in the NFL.
Yeah, they do. I mean, Lamar Jackson it's like playing a video game with Lamar Jackson. He balled out. But I give it to Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's an interesting player. When he got drafted, number 1 overall by the Cleveland Browns, I don't even remember what year it was. It was such a huge surprise to me that they drafted him number 1 overall. And then, I mean, he had some success in Cleveland. He went to Carolina, had a little bit of success there. But like you said, he's a fun guy to root for now that he's in Tampa Bay. He's found, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the city or the coaching staff or what it is, but he seems to have found the right place for him to succeed. And he's played very well in Tampa. I did take them to beat the Ravens. Just like you said, I feel like the Ravens have, early in the season, they were kind of up and down. That has kind of changed. They've really put it together and they're a very dominant team no matter who they play now. This Tampa team, after that game against the Ravens, they are a different team. Mike Evans got injured. It looks like he's going to be out like 3 to 4 weeks. And then right at the end of the game, literally the last drive, I give it to Baker Mayfield and that offense. They mounted a comeback. I mean, it was interesting. The Ravens had pulled Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, but the Bucs were within 10 points with like 2 minutes left to go, and they were driving. So that was kind of interesting. But one of the last couple of plays of the game, their other top wide receiver, Chris Godwin, caught a pass across the middle. I heard today that it sounds like the league is looking at it as a hip drop tackle, but his left ankle got rolled up and We don't know for sure yet, but it sounds like it was a dislocated ankle, which I guess I didn't know this, but a dislocated ankle is potentially career-ending injury. And Godwin really had
photo.
Yeah.
There's the photo that circulated, and that ankle's not supposed to turn the way that ankle was turned.
It was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. So I've seen it all over social media. Chris Godwin got put on the cart and he had an air cast on his leg, and some people think that he was talking to the trainer or whatever sitting next to him on the cart saying, "My career's over," something like that. I feel for him. He really was. He's been a solid wide receiver for that team for many years. He kind of has been standing out as even the number one wide receiver above Mike Evans on that team. And now for potentially his career to be over it's unfortunate to see. After this week, this is a different Bucs team. Their top two wide receivers are one out for potentially ever, the other out for 3 or 4 weeks. Their running back situation, they've got now 3 different running backs that are all fairly decent, but not difference makers like a Saquon Barkley that are going to put the team on the back and win a game for you. So I think the Bucs are in for a change of pace the rest of the season.
Yeah, and looking at Derrick Henry, he finished the game. Where'd that go? 15 carries, 169 yards.
Yeah.
No touchdowns.
He was quiet,
but
he was quiet for a long time, and then he broke off an 80-yard run. He does it every week. At least one big run for 50-plus yards. It's crazy.
Through 7 games, he has 873 yards rushing, so he's definitely pacing for close to 2,000 yards. And I don't know. I mean, it's hard to keep that pace, but you also head into the cooler months of the year, and that running becomes a little bit more of a focus. It'll be interesting to see, but yeah, put him on a team where you got a passing threat like Lamar Jackson, and clearly that offense is definitely a scary thing to have to face. Last game, and then we'll get to score predictions for week 8. I don't got a whole lot of thoughts. Cardinals edged the Chargers 17-15. I didn't watch the game. I was definitely rooting for the Chargers because I picked them, but Justin Herbert did not throw any touchdowns. He finished the game with 349 yards, so he threw a shit ton of crap ton of passes. Really, I mean, it was a field goal driven game, the Chargers in general. And here we go. I mean,
they didn't score a touchdown, right?
No, they did not score a touchdown.
Well, and the other odd part of that game was J.K. Dobbins, the Chargers starting running back, was kind of expected to eat this game. He was expected to rush for over 100 yards, have a huge game, and he really didn't do a whole lot. The Chargers offense was very stagnant. The Cardinals offense was stagnant too. It was such a low scoring game. Neither of these I guess the Chargers defense has played fairly well, but expected this game to be a little more high scoring, but it was kind of a boring, drawn out game. No touchdowns for the Chargers.
I said last week that was the boring game of the two, and you're like, boring game? It's the Chargers and the Cardinals.
Really? Did I say that? Did I do that? Did I say that? Did I go like this? Is that what I did?
No, you didn't do this though, which I still have that magical superpower.
Ooh.
All right, let's move over to week 8. We've given our breakdowns of all these teams and where they currently sit, so we might be able to fly through this relatively quick. Vikings at Rams. I really need to change how I have this. Let me change this real quick. I don't care who your picks are. I had it side by side. You're just going to tell me your picks anyway, bro. I want to see the spread. I like the spreads. Minnesota opens as 3-point favorites over the Los Angeles Rams. Rams are at home. Cooper Kupp coming back. Puka Nacua, maybe coming back.
Puka Nacua, I doubt that he comes back this week. They did open up his opportunity to come back to practice, and I mean, there's technically a potential that he plays, but I doubt it. But Kupp, Sounds like Cup likely plays. So yeah, that does make a difference.
On the season, Matthew Stafford has 1,400 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. 3 touchdowns.
Eesh.
Ouch. I see you have Minnesota in this particular game. I am going to go with the Rams on this particular game. And it's a hope more than anything else, because outside of this game, it's like smooth sledding for the Vikings, and I need them to lose one more game before they go on like another 6-game win streak.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the hope is this is the downward slide for those Minnesota Vikings. I mean, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. Last time they were 5-0, they only won 3 more games the rest of the season. So they got to lose. They got to lose more if that's going to be the way this season goes.
They're good. They're good. I'm saying it. They're good. Eagles and Bengals. Cincinnati opened the 2.5-point favorite. Again, that's that home team mentality. Who do you got in this one?
I took the Eagles in this one. I think it'll be a very good game, though.
I'll take the Bengals.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. Joe Burrow, for the love of all things holy, show up and play football on Sunday.
I don't think it's been a Burrow issue, honestly. No? I don't think he's been playing poorly. I think their losses have come because of weird situation. Ill-timed turnovers, poor defense play. I don't know if it's been a Burrow issue necessarily.
I'm looking at the stats. 1,700 yards passing, 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. It's not a Joe Burrow problem. Those are pretty good stats right there. Ravens and the Browns, don't even probably spend a whole lot of time in this. Want to guess what the spread is for Baltimore to win that one?
Oh, man. I don't know. Are they like 14-point favorites or something like that?
Only 9-point favorites, which is still a pretty strong spread.
It's more than 1 touchdown, so it might as well be a 14-point favorite.
Titans and the Lions face off. Lions have a much larger spread. We're both taking Baltimore, so when it comes to the Titans, the Lions open as 11-point favorite. I'm not seeing any surprises on that one either. We're both going to take the Lions. Here's where things get a little bit interesting. Miami opens as 3-point favorites against the Arizona Cardinals. You got that smirk on your face. Tua might be back. Will he know where he's at? We don't know. These are the 2 teams that early on in the season, I did not pick against the Cardinals. You could not pick against the Dolphins. Is this one already written in stone?
I don't know. I mean, we talked extensively about the Tua situation. We don't necessarily agree with the decision for him to come back and play football in general, but him coming back does make this a different team. It makes them a much better team. So I took the Dolphins.
I'll take the Cardinals. Let's not change things now. It's only week 8.
Yeah.
The New York Jets are going to face off against the Patriots. We just had a little dissertation about how much we like to see the Jets fail. I'm not betting against New York in this one. Not only am I looking at that spread of 7 points, but we discussed how the Patriots...
Really?
7-point favorites in this matchup. Jets are going to come out and have more fun. And with that, they'll win this game. Let's just put it that way. Taking the Jets also?
Yes, I am taking the Jets. 7-point favorites, though, that surprises me. And honestly, each week, I feel like you give me what the spread is. Granted, we're recording on Tuesday evening. I may need to look into starting to take some bets, even taking in this situation, taking the Patriots to cover the spread, because some of these spreads seem so ridiculous. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense to me. The way the Jets have played, and they're coming off a loss. I mean, I understand it's the Patriots, but 7 points. It's a little odd.
I'm not saying the Jets are going to figure it out for the rest of the season, but I think having Devontae there another week, I think just back-to-back losses, easy opponent. They should take care of business. Falcons and Buccaneers. Atlanta opens as 2.5-point favorites, which is essentially nothing. Both these teams are 4-3, so the winner would essentially move to number 1 in the division. Falcons edged out the Buccaneers a few weeks ago, 36-30. And as we discussed with these injuries that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are facing, boy, I really don't like taking Atlanta with how poorly they played last week, but it's an up and down team. I'll go with Atlanta on this one, I guess.
Originally I was going to take Atlanta for those reasons that I talked about with the Bucs, the loss of Mike Evans, the loss of Chris Godwin, but I did change it. I'm taking the Bucs, and it's a gut feeling. I feel like after all that adversity against the Ravens, I feel like at least this week, it's going to be a storyline. Baker Mayfield comes off of that devastating loss and the loss of his top 2 wide receivers and gets it done with, it's likely going to be the combination of young rookie wide receivers and a couple of veterans. Cade Otton, the tight end, he had a big end of the game against the Ravens, and then that basically 3-headed backfield that the Bucs have. So I gut feeling the Bucs take this one. I don't know if that continues the rest of the season. Like I said, I think this is a completely different team now, but this week at least, I'm taking the Bucs.
Yeah, a healthy Bucs team, this one becomes way easier to take them.
Yeah,
because they need to even up the series, divisional matchup like that. What's interesting, there was 66 combined points just a few weeks ago, and now the total is only 46.5. So early bettors are saying it's going to be a much lower scoring game. I agree with it. Coin toss game, we're going to split on that one. Colts face off against the Texans. Houston opens as 6-point favorites. Houston.
Yeah.
We're starting to figure out what some of these teams should be and are becoming. I haven't picked Houston. I don't know if I've picked Houston. I took them to beat the Bears. And I think that's anyway. Chargers face off against the Saints. God, these ones seem kind of easy as well. Chargers open as 7-point favorites. Saints are not coming back anytime soon. I will take the Chargers.
Yeah, I'm taking the Chargers too, but with the way the Chargers performed against the Cardinals, this might become a much closer game than we'd expect it to be.
Yeah, I would take the Saints to cover the spread for sure on that one if we were betting it. Bills and Seahawks. Bills open as 3-point favorites. Seahawks are at home. Bills are the road team. Afternoon game on Fox. I'm sure you're taking the Bills.
I am.
That's the safe pick. I'll take the Seahawks. Why not?
Okay. I don't blame you for taking the Seahawks. I honestly, I think the Seahawks can be a team that can beat the Bills. I talked about it earlier. I think the addition of Amari Cooper to this Bills team makes them a completely different team and puts them in the tops of the league as far as competitors for a playoff spot, competitors for a Super Bowl to potentially.
Track game. Panthers and Broncos. Real barn burner in this one. Denver, 9-point favorites. I've had good luck taking the Broncos up to this point. I'm not doing anything different though either.
Yeah, I'm not. I'd take the Broncos as well, but again, 9-point favorites. I would take the Panthers to cover that spread.
I would
potentially. We talked about it earlier. Jonathan Brooks, he practiced last week. He may play this week. That could be the difference maker as far as covering the spread. I don't think that makes a difference in them winning that game, but it may make a difference in them covering that 9-point spread. That's for sure.
Chiefs are going to move to 7-0 because they face off against the Vegas Raiders. Divisional matchup. Kansas City, 10-point favorites. I don't even know who Kansas City's backup quarterback is, but they could probably have him in there and still beat the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, I 100% agree. But I feel like every season there are games like this where it's very, 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 very obvious who should win that game. And then for whatever reason, the underdogs squeaks one out. So who knows? Yeah. I'm taking the Chiefs. Yes, I am taking the Chiefs. But I wouldn't be surprised, I guess, if the Raiders somehow win this one. But
yeah,
I'd take them to cover the spread.
Okay. All right. Afternoon game on CBS, the Chicago Bears head to Washington to face off against the Commanders. What do you think the spread is on this one?
I'm sure it's close. 2.5, 3.
4.
It's 4.
I mean,
Are we
for
just?
who? For who?
Oh, Washington.
No, 1.5-point favorites are the Bears.
Really? It's because of the Jaden Daniels thing.
It's got to be because of the Jaden
Yeah.
Daniels thing. Yeah. So I think we're both assuming that he plays.
Mm-hmm.
But even if he doesn't, I'm still a little bit surprised that the Bears are favored in this one. I'll take the Commanders. I'm sure you did too. You haven't picked the
I
Bears
did.
once, have you?
No, I have not. Even though they've won 4 times. 4 times? Yeah, 4 times.
Sunday Night Football. What's another term for barn burner? This one's going to be interesting. Cowboys at San Francisco. Before the season started, this was probably like a high-profile Sunday night game. Both playoff teams from last year that were firing all cylinders. They were 1 and 2 seeds, I think, right? Yeah, 1 and 2 seeds last year. San Francisco is 4.5-point favorites over the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm not entirely sure why. Yeah.
Seriously, I think we need to start betting on some of this. Like, there is money to be made here because these lines are insane. Where do you get your odds?
It's ESPN.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
ESPN just came
ESPN.
out with they have a new platform. It's like ESPN Bet or something like that, where you can bet
why
on
they're
these
laying off
lines.
all these anchors, because they're so buried in these bets that people are just
Yeah.
stealing all of their money.
Yeah.
With that being said, though, I don't know who you took. I don't necessarily want to bet against who you're going to bet, so I'm just going to go for on my gut here. You make a Parsons healthy? No, Niners.
Okay.
I'll go Niners.
I took the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys. I think we talked about it earlier. The injury woes for the 49ers have really decimated their season. Ayuk's gone for the entire rest of the season. Debo, obviously, he's out of the hospital, but who knows if he plays. McCaffrey's still out. So really, as far as the weapons that we're used to seeing for San Francisco, it's George Kittle and Jordan Mason, I guess, who has been the backup that's filled in for McCaffrey. And Mason has played well, but if that's who they have, Brock Purdy, George Kittle, and Jordan Mason, I don't think they beat the Cowboys.
They have one more weapon, don't they, on the receiving core? Who are we forgetting about?
Juwan Jennings, he's a veteran receiver that kind of has stood out as kind of he's the third, number 3 wide receiver, but he had a big game in the Super Bowl. He's had a couple of pretty decent games this year. So with Ayuk out for the season, Debo potentially out, he becomes probably the number 1. And then Ricky, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. No, not Ricky Martin. He's pretty elderly, I think, at this point. No, Ricky Pearsall. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He's a rookie wide receiver who actually just came back from injury. He was shot in the preseason. He was at a retail store and was shot in the chest, walked away from the scene, like he walked to the ambulance, and has been on IR ever since. So Pearsall comes back this week. He practiced this week, I believe, and he's likely to play in this next game. So he becomes really the number 2 wide receiver. So that's what Brock Purdy's working with. If Debo can't play, he's working with Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, whatever, and George Kittle.
I hear you. I mean, the Cowboys should win this game, but
yeah,
the Cowboys too. So, are you feeling very confident about your Cowboys pick?
I'm pretty confident in it. They just came off a bye as well. Would I put a lock on it?
Your locks are always wrong, so I was really hoping you would. And then the Monday night matchup, Giants take on the Steelers. Steelers are 6.5-point favorites. Steelers have looked good and will continue to look good. I'm going to take the Steelers in that matchup.
I believe I took the Giants in this one.
All right.
Let me check.
I hope you're right.
Yeah, I took the Giants in this one. I don't know. I just feel like I don't necessarily believe that this. I don't 100% believe that this Pittsburgh team is as good as they've been so far. They're very limited on their weapons around Russell Wilson now. And the Giants, like I said, we talked about their loss to the Eagles. I was surprised that Neighbors didn't play as well. So I feel like it's a little bit of a bounce back game for the Giants, and then maybe a little bit of a down game for Russell Wilson and the Steelers.
I don't think it's going to be any of that. I think the Steelers absolutely destroy them, to be perfectly honest with you.
All right.
But I'm really interested in why you said that. Because let's move over to our power ranking. So who do you have at number 10 on your power rankings?
I'm pretty sure I'm sure I have Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, so why do you have Pittsburgh at number 10 on your power rankings?
Oh, I actually have them at 9.
What? Yes, you do. I was looking at week 7. Sorry.
Nope, I have Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
I do have Pittsburgh at 9.
Segue. We'll screw the segue. Let's just do power rankings like we normally do it, because we'll start from the top. You have it pulled up because I wanted to send it so we could both look at them side by side.
Yep, I got it.
So Kansas City, obviously, at number 1. At number 2, I have, we flopped our 2s and 3s. So I have Detroit over Baltimore. Just, I think, I don't know why. It could go hand in hand, right? You have them at 2, or excuse me, Baltimore at 2, Lions at 3, I have vice versa. It's really interchangeable. What do you think? Did you go 50-50 on how you placed them? Or I guess, why did you feel like Baltimore was the better pick over the Lions?
The Ravens' most recent wins have been very dominant, and Lamar Jackson has played really well. Derrick Henry has played really well. There's been an emergence of Rashad Bateman, who has had 3 weeks in a row now where he played really well. They've got 2 tight ends that either one of them could go off in Mark Andrews or Isaiah Likely. So I just think that the Ravens offense is, I don't know that there's a better offense in the league right now, and their defense is pretty stout as well. So it wasn't really a coin flip for me between the Ravens and the Lions. Ravens were going to be number 2 for me no matter what.
So would you take the Ravens over the Lions if they were playing this weekend?
I think I would, honestly.
And I think I would take the Lions over the Ravens, which shouldn't surprise anybody. We just did all of our picks this last week, and we tend to pick against each other in some of these 50-50 games. At number 4, I'm a little bit surprised. I have Buffalo at 4. I have Buffalo at number 7. I didn't move them anywhere in my power rankings. There's obviously movement kind of all around them. I think your justification is the addition of Cooper to that roster and what this team can be. For me, maybe I'm just not paying attention to the Bills enough to consider them a threat. I mean, at 7 on my ranking, I kind of look at every team I have above them, and I would say I would even favor, a healthy Jaden Daniels Washington Commanders team. I would take them for an upset over the Bills just with how that team's been clicking. That's my personal opinion. I don't need a smirk from you, Christian, but you're higher on the Buffalo Bills than I am. That's probably our biggest gap out of everything that we have listed here.
Yeah, everything else is pretty similar.
We keep Green Bay and Minnesota neck to neck, right next to each other, with Green Bay getting the nod. Is that, you had a huge drop. I think you have Minnesota at, I have
2.
it right here. You have Minnesota at number 2. So they dropped 4 spots on a loss to Detroit. You don't factor in the fact that they played a really good Detroit Lions team into that equation, or are you just looking to give them some shade?
I think the loss to the Lions, if they would have lost to anyone else but the Lions, if the Vikings would have lost to anyone else but the top 3 teams, Kansas City, Baltimore, or Detroit, if they would have lost to anybody else besides those 3 teams, I would have probably dropped them further. But because they lost to a very good Lions team, that's why I have them where they're at.
We both like the Packers ahead of Minnesota. I wish we could have that week 3 game back, or week 4 game back.
Right? The week 4 first half I would like back.
Yeah, it was week 4. Yeah, just the first half. And McManus at kicker, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Oh, what could have been?
Behind Minnesota and Green Bay, we both have Washington next in our power rankings. We like what they're doing. They, as we've already mentioned before, they're an up and coming team. Houston Texans took a drop for both of us. First time we agree at them at the same position in our power rankings at number 8. Not necessarily that. I mean, last week you had them at 6. I had them at 5. I had the bigger fall. I just really wanted to give some love to the Commanders, I think, more than anything. I didn't see the Vikings obviously dropping below Houston, neither did you. And then I still think I originally had Houston above the Bills, but the Bills beat them a few weeks ago, and they're probably still the better team between the two. No,
The Bills lost to the Texans.
Well, my full power rankings are fucked then. I'm just going to start swearing all sorts of stuff at this point. I have no logic. My power rankings are blasphemy. There's no logic whatsoever. At number 9, we got the Steelers.
Yeah.
And then at number 10, it was hard for me to pick a number 10. I rolled the dice. I had the Eagles in there originally. I saw you put the Eagles at number 10. I'm like, you know what? This is the one and only week that the Chicago Bears will break my top 10. I'm going to give it to them. Not to make friends. They're going to be like number 20 here in about 3 or 4 weeks. So I'm going to put them at number 10 for now.
All right.
Which is tough. I had Tampa and Atlanta at 9 and 10 last week. They both dropped completely out. You did not. Who did you have drop out of your? You had the Bucs at 8 last week. They dropped completely out. So
yeah, and as far as my the Bears, I wouldn't have them close enough to my top 10 to have them squeak in above the Eagles or above anyone else at number 10. I don't necessarily have them close enough to that. I mean, off the top of my head, where would I have? Maybe I'd have the Bears at like 14 or something like that right now.
I can see that.
But this Eagles team, I talked about it before. I think they're healthy now. They had a pretty dominant win over the Giants. I feel like they kind of are bouncing back from their early season woes, and we start to see the Eagles perform better and better throughout the season. That's why I jumped them up into the top 10 again.
Did you have anyone else that you were considering outside of the Eagles?
I mean, I made my power rankings fairly quickly. It's getting easier and easier. Just like you said not too long ago, we're kind of figuring out who these teams are, what they should be, what we can expect week in, week out from them. So it's getting a lot easier to make these top 10s. Other teams that I maybe was looking at, maybe the Seahawks, maybe the Falcons, the Bengals. Every time I'm looking at power rankings, I know the Bengals record doesn't reflect it, but they've got 2 wins in a row now. They're starting to click a little bit, and I just feel like they're a better team than we've seen so far. So every time I'm making these power rankings, I see the Bengals and I'm like, no, not yet. We got to see a few more wins, some high profile wins from the Bengals before I even consider them in the top 10. But yeah, I don't know. The Seahawks is maybe the only one that I can think of that I would have considered at 10.
Surprised they didn't put the Dolphins at 10. Are you a Billy Madison fan?
I have seen Billy Madison, yes. Yes.
So yeah, when I took the Bears at 10, I was thinking, I drew the duck blue because I've never seen a blue duck before, and I wanted to see what it looked like. I took the Bears at number 10. So I never thought I'd see the Bears at number 10, and I wanted to see what it would look like on a power ranking. So I hold that.
And how do you feel about it? How do you feel about it now?
Fantastic. And with that, we've officially been doing. This is our longest recording of all time. Can't wait to sift through all these lovely conversations again. So we're going to wrap it up for week 8. Thanks again for checking out the video. Tom and Max, go ahead and comment down below that you made it to the end of overtime. Victory shades are back on. Packers hope to move to 6-2. They have to move to 6-2. 5-3 just sounds dirty. 6-2 sounds nice and clean. So with that, we'll wrap it up. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, comment, and we'll see you next week on the internet. Cheers.